Hello and welcome to In Other News. I'm your host, Wendell Robinson. So pleased you're choosing to spend 30 minutes of your priceless time with our conversation, always steered by truth, some fun, and blackness. Instead of the headlines, we focus on the backstory, which can provide some context to the news of the day, sometimes going way back, as the author Isabel Wilkerson puts it, to the origins of our discontent, but also to the celebration of our resilience, ability to thrive, resist, succeed, even find joy in the face of it all. I mention your priceless time because this episode in some ways is about time, near lifetime spent locked up, starting as an actual child. This backstory does go way back. Did you know that the Cook County Criminal Court was the first place in the nation back in the late 1800s to recognize that young people should not be treated the same as grown-ups, even if they committed the same crimes? This was way before modern science proved that the development of the brain is physically, neurologically, just half-baked until we reach our mid-20s. Intuitively, leaders back in 1899 figured it out, founded the very first juvenile justice court, separate and different from the adult system. So forward-thinking. But it was pretty much all downhill from there. 100 years later, fear and fear-mongering has formed a system that believes in the mythical super predator. If you do the crime, you do the time, no matter that your time on this earth has been brief, often filled with trauma, without any control over your circumstances or immature responses. Worse yet, children, young people, are so easily manipulated into harmful behavior and can be coerced into admitting things they haven't even done. Enter the juvenile lifer, sentenced to life in prison as a child. In the United States, nearly 12,000 people are serving life sentences for crimes committed when they were under the age of 18. About 2,300 are serving life without parole. The rest are technically eligible for parole usually, but many facing a virtual life sentence. That's where a sentence is longer than you can reasonably be expected to live. Up until a few years ago, every state in the nation allowed juvenile life sentences. Supreme Court rulings, though, in 2005, 2010, 2012, and 2016 leaned on the Eighth Amendment of the Constitution, the cruel and unusual punishment deal, to confirm that juveniles have to be sentenced differently than adults, that life sentences should only apply to the most heinous of crimes by a child that is so deranged, so damaged, so irrevocably evil that rehabilitation is not possible. In other words, very, very rarely. But those rulings are not applied retroactively. Every juvenile lifer already doing time has to petition individually, and some states are interpreting the modern rulings very differently. Illinois, however, is trying to reclaim its status as a place where common sense and science trump hysteria and vengeance, where the idea of juvenile courts started. There's a new state law against juvenile life sentences. It was hard fought. The people leading the fight were the juvenile lifers themselves. It is an incredible story of resilience and advocacy to stop the over-incarceration that really robs us all. So much talent and potential just locked away. My guests today are living proof, doing amazing things after spending decades behind bars. Brian Beals was wrongly incarcerated at age 22, a life sentence for a crime he did not commit. He started an award-winning theater program in prison. Wendell Robinson got a life sentence for a crime committed before he was 18 years old. A life sentence, a juvenile lifer. But now he's the executive director of Restore Justice, the very organization that helped win his release. A conversation rooted in truth. There's going to be some fun and blackness. May make you mad or sad, but also give you hope, new ideas, maybe even a to-do list. Can't wait for you to meet Brian and Wendell making other news when we come back.
Hi, I'm Bianca Cotton. Join me Mondays at 7 p.m. for Behind the Confident Smile as I sit in conversation with incredible, dynamic, and complex Chicagoans who peel back the layers, living lessons, the joy, and the pain behind their confident smiles. You can watch on CanTV 19, cantv.org, and CanTV Plus app.
Back with two very special guests, guys who forged a way out and up when the justice system told them prison was where they would die. Not so. Wendell Robinson and Brian Beals, thank you so much for being here with me. I know Wendell pretty well. We're not cousins despite the last name. I just recently met Brian. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
So Wendell runs an organization called Restore Justice. Restore Justice is sponsoring a play that is being put on by Brian's organization, and it's called?
Mud Theater Project.
Okay, and the play is called?
Searching for Justice.
Searching for Justice. It seems like that would describe how you all have spent a good part of your lives.
Facts.
Facts?
Yes.
Okay. So Wendell, how did you become the executive director of Restore Justice? Or how did you become involved with them even?
I became involved with Restore Justice prior to me coming home. In the inception of the organization, my predecessor, founder, and founding board members had the idea to come to the prisons and visit people that they were advocating for. The inception of the organization, Restore Justice North Star, was to abolish juvenile life without parole. And so they had the idea, like, we want to go and visit the people that have this sentence, just to meet them and put some faces to, a cause that they were championing. So that was my initial, relationship with the organization in 2015.
And to ultimately turn over the leadership of the organization to someone that was at the closest to the issue, i.e. a former juvenile lifer yourself, that sounds really transformational to me.
It is. So unfortunately, my predecessor fell ill with long COVID.
Oh.
And she couldn't assume her duties. So we acted in a co-executive director capacity for a little bit. And then when we found out that she wasn't going to return, our board unanimously voted me to become the next executive director.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
To a guy who got out of prison after 25 years and had never put his hands on a computer.
Facts. Yes. Yes.
Right? I mean, and I'm just going to testify. He sends me emails all the time, so I know your skills are good. And we'll talk a little bit about what helped you through that journey, but how you connected with Brian Beals, who was not a juvenile lifer, and really, I know you don't want to spend the whole show, because we could, talking about your exoneration, but just let it be said that most people agree, research is a little hard to come by sometimes, because all prisons aren't always reporting everything in all courts, but that you have spent the second longest amount of time behind bars of any exonerated individual, 35 years.
Yeah.
When you were 22 years old, you're a college student.
I was a college student at SIU in Carbondale.
Came home, some stuff went wrong, and somebody said you misidentified you, basically.
Right.
That's got to be tough. First of all, you're an educated man.
Mm-hmm.
And you're a college student. You can be locked up. You had your whole life ahead of you, which is the problem with sentencing someone that young to such a long sentence. It is a whole life, which is twice as long as somebody old's whole life. But when you got there, you didn't just say, my life is over. You started doing things.
Yeah, I became a part of a community, right away, just being in orientation, hearing the conversations that men were having above me. You couldn't see them because the way galleries are stacked. But I figured if I had to be there, I needed to be a part of, the solution. And I had a little bit of an education, which was an advantage in a situation like that. And I just found opportunities to apply it.
I read that one of your former fellow inmates said that you gave him a book to read, and that it changed his life, that he'd not read a book just to be reading.
Yeah, one of the first things I realized, my family always supported me with a lot of reading material. And guys would come around and I would talk to them about it. And I would say, well, why don't you read it for yourself? And then guys would shy away. And I began to understand it was because it was a literacy problem. And so I teamed up with one of the teachers over in the school. She had started a literacy program, but only 2 people were participating in it. And so we, in the course of about 2 weeks, got it up to 200. And we really
There's a little marketing going on, but it's also just connecting within your community.
Yeah, so just going out and putting the word out that, we really got to tackle this education issue. And we really have to be the ones to tackle it ourselves, because the system isn't going to do it for us.
And I imagine there's some embarrassment of admitting that you can't read, but once you find out, he can't either, and he can't either, so you build, it's okay to then learn together. That just fascinates me that everyone knows there's a literacy problem, and that maybe that leads to some people ending up where they are, right? Mm-hmm. But doing something about it, you can't have a literacy program with 2 students.
Yeah, I mean, so you got to realize a prison is a really small space and everybody knows everybody.
Okay.
So you can't really keep those secrets, but you just got to man up and be, accept the challenge to do something about it. So when you have people, not just me, but other people who mentored me coming into the system, talking about it, and we just got it done, So we started that program, Strive Literacy Program, and it was recognized.
It's called the SWAV Literacy?
Strive.
Strive, okay.
Yeah, students teaching, reading via an education.
Okay, SWAV would have been good too, but I'm just saying. And then you started a theater program.
Yeah, I had, kind of aged a little bit in the system. In 2016, I got to Dixon Correctional Center, and they had like a real theater, like the stage, the curtains, the audience. And I had been a journalist. I worked for a prison newspaper in Pontiac and Stateville. And for me, it was just a way to like get around some of the censorship that was going on, to write these stories that depict the real actual prison life, culture, and conditions.
That's right.
And just found a group of young, talented poets and rappers and just really charismatic guys. And we put this theater program together.
We have a clip of you talking about starting the Mud Theater Project while you were incarcerated, and it's part of a larger piece that you did for a fundraiser. So have a look.
The Mud Theater Project is trying to do what we did in prison for the communities out here that could use our help, and also trying to inspire guys on the inside that it's a place for us to come out here and build our own organizations. It has to be a way to inspire guys, particularly creatives. Say, man, here's this place, the Mud Theater Project or the Mud Movement, that I can invest in and prepare myself to, come out and join these guys and make a difference in the community and be able to reimagine what that looks like every time we embark on a new project. Not to be stuck, to be able to be nimble and, to iterate what we're doing and change on a dime and be effective wherever we operate. That's the hope.
Achieving something like that while you're locked up doesn't sound possible to people, right? Mm-hmm. Now you have gone a step further and you're on the outside. You've only been released, exonerated, back with us for a year, a little more than a year when this program airs. And you've done a lot in that year.
Well, I had a lot of help. Let's just be honest,
Okay.
So.
Yeah, all right. So you had help from Restore Justice?
Definitely. Like Restore has been a part of the Mud Theater Project's journey from its inception.
Okay.
When we started, we were calling ourselves the Dixon Theater Workshop, and we kind of plateaued. None of us had any training or university help. So I called my buddy Wendell. We had formulated a real tight bond before he had went home, and I was like, man, I need some help here, man. You need to help us figure out how to take this to the next level. So in typical Wendell fashion, he said, I know somebody that might be able to help you. And he connected us with Paramount Theater program in Aurora. Mm-hmm. And they came in and they did this workshop. And then so many guys got inspired by it that we actually changed our name to the Dixon Performing Arts Program. And that's when we started winning awards and as writers and poets and journalists. And
while you were still incarcerated?
While we were still incarcerated. Mm-hmm. PEN America is the preeminent writing competition for convicted people all over America, and here we were competing with all these people all over the United States and winning.
I would think that would be a really good part of rehabilitation, right? That if you give people, I believe in the power of the creative arts, mm-hmm. and if you can, get folks into that, at least for some people, I would think that it'd be something they'd want to have like everywhere in a very serious way.
Yeah, but unfortunately, each prison is its own operation. Mm-hmm. So you find staff who will support projects like that in some prisons and not others. Mm-hmm. And so,
what can we do about that? Okay, I would like to give people a to-do list, right? So I know you're working on some things. You have the play, but the play also speaks to one of Restore Justice's core goals right now. I was saying earlier how the laws have changed over how you can sentence people whose crimes happened before they were, grown, before they were 18. Mm-hmm. The laws have changed based on Supreme Court rulings, but they didn't say, and everybody you did that to, that you put this cruel and unusual punishment on has to get out. They didn't do that, did they?
They didn't do that, but I feel like they made it kind of hard, right? Because I think the first hurdle was to see that it would be applied retroactively, because most times laws are passed is just prospective, just moving forward, right? So the Supreme Court had to go back in and say that these will be applied retroactively, right? And they did that, and myself and it was like maybe 101 people in this state became eligible for resentencing.
Okay.
From having mandatory life sentences, right? But it created a way that it was still work to be done, right? Because even though the Supreme Court said that they couldn't give people mandatory, it was unconstitutional to give people mandatory life sentences. It was
People of a certain age. Okay.
18, under 18, right? But you still had a person, just say for the sake of this conversation, say you had a person that was 18 in one day, right? It didn't apply to them. So it was a group of people that didn't get the relief that I got because they may have been 2 weeks older than me, or at the time of their crime, they was 18 in a day, and they wasn't afforded that opportunity. But and last year we were able to pass some legislation that made it to see to it that people 20 and under would not be able to receive juvenile life without parole.
Okay.
So
That's only in Illinois.
That's in Illinois.
Okay.
That's in Illinois, and it's something that we're really proud about. It's something that that I was in Springfield speaking with legislators about. We had like a last minute push where it was just full court press, and we were able to get it across the finish line, and it's something that myself and the organization is really proud of. For me to have that sentence, and then to be a part of abolishing that sentence in this state.
Right. And also, something I don't think everybody realizes is there's been no parole in Illinois, right? That's been our practice, and just since like 1978.
Since 1978, they abolished the parole system in Illinois. So
we have like a parole board, and don't we have? I mean,
we do have a parole board, but it deals with the existing people that had the opportunity to go in front of the parole board. Okay. So you had a class of people that was in the system prior to 1978 that the parole board was still responsible for seeing if it was a 1 year, 2 year, or however many years set that they were getting.
If you don't have a possibility of parole, what's your incentive to do well while you're incarcerated?
That's on the individual, right? It depends on just how people choose to do their time, right? Some people, that goes in those systems early on, particularly like myself. I went in as a kid. I mean, I wasn't even shaving when I went into prison, right? But you have that idea that you want to better, and then sometimes we just age out of certain behavior, right? There's no way that I could be the same person I went in at 17. I came home at 42.
That's
right.
I don't like any 17-year-olds. I'm just kidding. No, I'm just saying it is a whole. But yes, you are a different person, and that which we all know because we all have raised people and been raised intuitively. But now it's proven. Science can look at the brain and say, okay, this is a young person, and this is a person who's now has a prefrontal cortex is working. They got an executive managing their decisions as opposed to just their emotions and hormones. But now that we know that to be true, it would seem like it's a pretty straightforward argument.
It is, and that was kind of like when we were able to pass the first new parole opportunities in this state. Wow. That was part of the argument that we were able to make. Like people don't develop, and we don't develop until we're in our mid-20s, right? And people were understanding of that, and we were able to bring back parole opportunities for people 20 years and younger because of the science that
that we now accept.
That-
So you
that
can
we
have experts. There's no expert that can disagree with that expert that says the brain is not fully developed until you're in your mid-20s.
Yes.
So not that any parent of a 22-year-old child couldn't have told them. But anyway, what are you working on now?
So now I think one of the bigger things that we are working on is just retroactivity. Because, I mean, if we can sit today and identify a problem, and then we can say that problem is wrong today, right? It's going to be wrong tomorrow as well, right? So simply put, it was wrong yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the legislation that we pursue is just moves perspective, right? It just moves forward. So even like some of the things that we have been able to pass, it wasn't retroactive. So we really feel like that people should have those opportunities of new laws being passed, and just even in the case like myself, just being able to really put forth their youthful characteristics at the time of their crime. Like those things weren't considered.
Right. Well, also, it just doesn't seem very, very smart to not use all the things that you now know. If maybe you didn't know it before, but when you know better, you supposedly do better, and
Yes.
and it doesn't seem like that ever gets through systemically, right? The policymakers are afraid to make a change is going to make them look like they're soft on anything. And back to Search for Justice, which is your play, there is, I believe, one of the protagonists in it is a lawmaker who is trying to think about how he's going to respond to a certain request to get out of the dark ages in terms of criminal justice, right?
Yeah, I mean, so we trying to show people like the decisions and the pressures that lawmakers are under from all sides of the issues, from victims, from people who want to identify problems in the system and fix it. So that's what we're trying to do. The search for justice is something that everybody feels, they're connected to.
Right.
We all searching for it. So we're going to put this play on, show this search from all sides, and let people see what it looks like.
So I'm thinking in my head, if the place sells out and they got to add a couple more days, maybe they'll do it again. Okay, so how do people, I'm making the assumption that you're going to still have tickets available, but if you don't, like you said, demand will create more opportunities. How can people find out more about the play and how to go and how to spread the word?
Well, you can go to restorejustice.org, and it'll be links that you can follow what it is that we do, figure out ways that you can get involved with what it is that we do, and then the things that we plan on doing. So restorejustice.org.
That's right. Even if you missed the play, there are other
Yeah.
things that are going on. And one more thing I wanted to ask you about. So you've been out for a year now, and Mud Theater Project is on the ground, outside the walls. Mm-hmm. But some of the actors in your play are still somewhat connected to the criminal justice system. Like they're not all the way out.
Right. 2 of the performers in Searching for Justice are right now currently incarcerated, meaning they live at the Adult Transition Center.
So they're on their way out.
Yeah, one has almost an entire year left. And, I think a lot of people don't really understand like the difficulties for guys who are out here doing work that a lot of people don't want to do, living in the ATC, but to bring them to
The
step
ATC,
in
the
with,
Adult Transition Center. Mm-hmm.
yeah, to have the opportunity. It's going to be so many guys that we all connected through our networks on the inside who are going to be inspired. Hundreds of guys went through our program on the inside, so you have an entire community like really, we hope to inspire with this.
Well, what inspires me about you guys is, you're out, but you haven't left the people behind without a thought. All right, you're focused on those that are still in, especially those that have been over sentenced or unfairly sentenced, or have not even given a chance to show that they can be or have been rehabilitated. Because if we just lock people up and don't do anything to try to to restore their opportunity, then we just lose that to our community. We lose people like Brian Beals, who could be out here creating these great performing arts. So Wendell Robinson, Restore Justice, and Brian Beals from Mud Theater Project. We appreciate you being here. Hope you'll come back. I cannot wait to see the play tomorrow night. I'll be the one in the front row going, yay! Yay, okay?
Absolutely.
All right, thanks for joining us in Other News. On the other side of this break, I'm back with this week's edition of Robin's Nest about this subject. Stay with us.
CAN TV is the lens through which Chicago's stories are told, harnessing the unifying power of community television. With CAN TV On Demand, immerse yourself in the richness of our city through exclusive stories and programs tailored just for you, connecting you to the heartbeats of our streets, the voices of our people, and the spirit that makes Chicago unique. Discover the strength of your community on CAN TV On Demand.
Thank you so much for your attention. Now, if you want to weigh in on the conversation, please feel free to email me, robinsothernnews@gmail.com. In Other News tries to share stories that matter, give you something to think about, even something to do. It's only possible, though, because people like Brian Beals and Wendell Robinson are willing to share their stories, so we have to thank them. It's not easy to dig into the pain of your past and turn it into power for the future, just as it's not easy for us to figure out what we should be doing differently in the criminal justice system. Since 43% of everyone that goes to prison gets out and within 3 years is right back behind bars, it doesn't take an accountant to calculate the failure of the current system, but it must be working for somebody. The over-incarceration of young people makes even less sense, except we're scared, looking for a quick fix. You can just talk with the elderly people living in the neighborhoods where young folks seem to be wilding out. They don't want to wait for some long intervention program that actually addresses the underlying causes of harmful behavior. We want to be able to walk out the door tomorrow without fear of getting shot or carjacked or otherwise assaulted. That fear is especially directed at young people. Why do you think that is? It's not because they're committing more crimes than older people. The stats are tough to nail down, but most research shows between 7 and 8%, just 7 and 8% of violent crime arrests are of people under 18 years old. They're over 20% of the population, so disproportionately, their rate of violence is pretty low. But how many of them do we hear about, those crimes? All of them. The younger an accused offender is, the more newsworthy they are. Who remembers Yummy Sandifer? A recent study focused on the Baltimore news media. Maryland had passed a tough new law that undid years of evidence-based reforms in juvenile justice. So legislators didn't follow the evidence, they followed the mob, and the mob was informed by an extraordinary amount and inflammatory tone of news reporting. The research by the Sentencing Project examined the 6 leading news outlets in Baltimore during the first half of 2024. Youth under 18 accounted for just 5% of the violent crime, but 28% of the news coverage about crime. One TV station focused its crime stories on young people more than 50% of the time. Not just the amount of coverage, but the words that are used when reporting about youth accused of violence. It is called a crime wave, a spike, a crisis. I notice a lot of stories online, especially like that Nextdoor app, calling it out of control, nonstop, amplifying public fear, and that can affect policy. Of course, it also drives ratings. You must hope, and you should choose, the media outlets that handle the narrative with responsibility and care. And now we have the advocacy, the reporting of those who have actually experienced the results of our dependence on punishment over rehabilitation, people like Brian and Wendell. The truth of their journey is well documented. The fun? Well, it's fun watching them find joy and success impacting justice and real lives. The blackness? 40% of America's inmates are black, despite being only 14% of the population. But you knew that. Hopefully, you question why. See you next time.